Welcome to Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. It's like coffee with an analyst, but there's no actual coffee. Each episode, we interviewed an expert in the field of law enforcement analysis to share their career-defining stories and to get their insights on the world. Please join us on recognizing and learning from these brilliant minds as we define the law enforcement analysis profession one episode at a time.
I hope many aspects of your life are progressing. My name is Jason Elder. I want to introduce you to our guest today, Carolyn Cassidy. She has almost two decades of analytical experience working in Florida, New York, Massachusetts, and Virginia. She's worked as both an intel analyst and a crime analyst. She's a trainer. She's a former IACA president. She's a Spanish speaker and was even once voted the most quiet in her high school senior class. Help me welcome Carolyn Cassidy. Carolyn, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I am doing well. How's life at home under the pandemic?
Oh, it's an interesting world we're in right now. That's working from home. Mm-hmm. So to me, the weekdays tend to be more productive. Weekdays I look forward to because I have a reason to get up, get moving around, and finish up my day later in the afternoon, cook dinner, and do it again the next day. Where the weekends, I find myself kind of wandering around, looking out the window at squirrels and just trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah, so my wife has 2 times of day now. She has coffee time, and then she has wine time.
And wine time.
Yes. So
we're on the same schedule. Yeah. Yep. So just pass it from one to the other.
Talked to somebody else the other day, and I said, well, I've been working from home for 2 years now, and I also started growing my hair out about 2 years ago. So I am well ahead of the curve of everybody else. So and I'm a homebody.
You are.
So this is not impacting me as much as it is other people. So you're in an intelligence analyst role now. So can you talk a little bit about your transition from a crime analyst to an intel analyst?
While it's very similar, I have found some differences and really enjoy what I'm doing these days. As a crime analyst, my focus was always statistics, which direction the crimes are going, how the increases are affecting the community and such, doing real-time response with officers that are out on the street, actually responding to calls. And now today I'm case focused. I work case by case with detectives directly, and that's my focus. It's not a day thing, and this is what we need to do to change it and impact some kind of crime or trend that's happening. It's more, this incident has occurred. We're working on finding the suspect or convicting the suspect, bringing them to trial. It's an interesting switch, but I really do enjoy this. And I'm lucky that I've been able to have both. I've been able to work in both worlds and see the differences.
Yeah, it's interesting to me, the dynamic between intelligence analysis and crime analysis. In the U.S., mm-hmm. we have a pretty good distinction between the two disciplines. Outside of the U.S., it's almost one and the same. I've talked to folks outside the country, and they find it a little odd that we separate the two. But just in what you described, it's two very different tasks.
I completely agree. And I have seen the same scenario where you're working outside of our country. A lot of countries have national police. Mm-hmm. So they're under one umbrella, where we have thousands of jurisdictions and smaller agencies, large agencies, a whole huge variety. So that right there shows a difference. And from there, their products and their output has to be very different, which is why I think they focus on other methods and don't understand why we separate the two.
Gotcha.
So it's all in the community, the environment, and how policing functions within the different countries.
Yeah, because the United States has so many different jurisdictions, that's where the need for the risk centers where you're working now, that's the regional information sharing system. That's where that comes into play. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So RIS, like you said, Regional Information Sharing System. It's a program that has 6 centers across the United States. They're all regional centers that focus on their areas and the problems that they have and unique communities within those different centers. I work for what we call NESPIN, which is the New England State Police Information Network. We support all officers, what we call access officers or agencies that join on. We support those agencies that are part of our program, local, state, federal, some federal, throughout New England. So we are in one location in one office in Massachusetts, but we support various states. They send us the information and then we work on that directly. There are times where we may have to meet and travel to these different states, for instance, going to trial and testifying for the cases that we've worked on. But primarily we're a centralized unit, but we're supporting these various agencies.
Yeah. So, I mean, countries that have just one police jurisdiction must find it funny that we have all these jurisdictions and have to create a system to share data.
Exactly. and we're, as an analyst, like you said, and aged me well, over almost 2 decades of being in this profession, that really hits you. That's been our focus, at least what I've seen, and in communicating with analysts and meeting with them and going to conferences. Our constant conversation is data sharing and how can we get agencies, officers, chiefs, sheriffs, all these different groups, how can we share and make these efforts more streamlined? Because everybody says crime doesn't follow the borders of a certain municipality or a county, state. They don't follow those lines. So our focus has always been data sharing, where you then look at an international agency and they are one unit. They have, I'm sure, have their own issues here and there for other reasons, but they can't understand why the obvious effort is to share information. That's where you're going to solve issues and be able to establish better communication and having better software or databases that share that. And that's just going to continue to be an ongoing project and process, and we are getting better at it.
Good. Do you have a particular case or project that you worked on, and it doesn't have to be your current position, it can be any of the positions that you had, where you're particularly proud of? This is usually a segment that I like to call where the analyst earned their analyst badge.
I like that. It's funny, as an analyst who has worked in various jurisdictions, different roles, you can always hold on to that memory where something has just clicked or kind of settled in. This isn't necessarily the story, but just to show gaining your wings or your analyst badge. Going from one jurisdiction to another, I noticed for myself personally, my confidence in my work from a very beginning analyst, trying to learn everything and wrap my head around everything law enforcement, as well as what we're doing as crime analysts to support law enforcement. And then moving to a second jurisdiction and just walking into that agency with knowledge and confidence was just completely different than when I first started. And I really felt that. And I think the people I worked with recognized that as well, because I had the experience. But as just an example story, I do recall, and this was not well into my career, but I had been doing it for a couple of years by then, feeling more confident, and had been working on a fairly important, all homicide cases are important, but fairly visible in the community. And I was working directly with a detective in the investigations unit. We had been through everything from day one together, which is great because that detective brought me on for support, and I was able to start right from the beginning and have all the information and gather what was important from the start, not trying to piecemeal everything after a full investigation had taken place. So that was one good thing. The case ended up having to be transferred over to a different jurisdiction, and it was our job now, after spending long hours and a lot of time put into this, to then basically package it up and transfer it to them. So we put together a presentation where the detective was able to express what steps were taken, what process occurred, and I assisted in putting the presentation together and at least helping run the presentation during this meeting, this handoff meeting, if you will, where one jurisdiction came in and we were able to pass it on to them. And as I was setting up and getting everything ready, and command staff was coming in because this was important, a lot of people were going to be involved, and I heard one of the higher commanders state to the detective, "Why is she here?" I heard it and didn't quite hear the answer, but basically I was there because I had been working on it from the beginning, and there was a lot of information, and I was going to be there to help run everything and try to get everything gathered and run smoothly so that we could then pass it on. The meeting continued. Everything went very well. The detectives from the other jurisdiction didn't have a crime analyst at the time. They joked to me saying, "Oh, we have a desk over at our office. Would you be willing to jump over and join us?" And it was just kind of laughing. They appreciated what we had done, and they saw the help that I was to the detective and to this whole process. From that day on, the commanding officer who questioned why this civilian analyst was going to be in this meeting, this important meeting, just took a complete 180, became one of our biggest champions. And this person would promote the crime analysis unit any chance they could get. It was wonderful. It clicked right there. It clicked for me, and I said, okay, we've got someone who recognizes it. And this person wasn't directly involved with crime analysis as much, but knew us and knew what we were there for. It took an instance like this, or a scenario, to really drive it home that we are of value to our agency and an integral part of sharing this information and helping support law enforcement, whether it be the officers on the street or the investigators that are in the office with us.
So what were some of the analytic techniques that you used on the case?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Meant to kind of explain that. My focus was, there were different tasks I would run using the network of crime analysts, whether it be my regional analyst or national analyst. I would reach out to others. We had symbols on T-shirts. We had surveillance footage. Photos would capture individuals wearing shirts with logos that I couldn't identify. And I would send that out, and people would know immediately, oh, this is a shirt from this company or brand, and we can find it here. And it was a wealth of information. Looking at the surveillance photo, trying to identify the type of vehicle that was in the photo, various tattoos, using the tattoos to try to then identify an individual. My primary focus was reviewing and analyzing communications records, seeing who communicated with who and important phone numbers.
Was that just telephone calls, or is that text and messaging and other forms of communication?
Primarily for this particular situation, just phone, raw data, not necessarily text, but trying to see frequency and the important phone numbers, and then, of course, running those phone numbers in various searches. It was the information and the work that I put in was the work that takes a lot of time and a lot of just going through with a fine-tooth comb. And that is not the type of time that detectives have. Mm-hmm. They need to be responding to leads and following up and interviewing people. And that is where an analyst comes in, and I could take that time and sit down and focus and not have a million things going at once and really get that information honed in and share with the detective.
It's all about the data.
Absolutely. Yep. We're data mongers.
Yes. Yes. So what was the outcome of the case?
The outcome was there were arrests made. The victim was located, and it was a positive outcome for the victim's family.
Yes. I think the story is also a great example of the change in perception and getting to know somebody and seeing what they do and how they can contribute, change the perception. A lot of law enforcement analysts can struggle with civilian versus sworn, or being from a different unit within the same police department.
Absolutely. Having someone by your side and who has your back to potentially save your life, there's that connection with officers, sworn officers. Mm-hmm. And they see someone who hasn't done that, worn the uniform. That is where they see value. But for someone to be able to step away from that perspective and see a civilian is a useful part of their family, their law enforcement family. And it makes you want to do better and gives you a little boost.
Products that you created were polished. Everything ran smoothly. You worked with confidence. You were professional. But I think of what if it would have went the opposite direction? You know, what if something would have went wrong or there was a mistake made? Think about the opposite direction. That commanding officer, basically all his preconceived notions would have been validated. From that point on, he would have been reluctant to even include you. And there's a lot of pressure to that situation. You got to take advantage of the opportunities.
Absolutely. That is so true. This goes for any profession, but you have to earn your credibility. Some kind of major mistake could truly affect your credibility and how you are viewed.
You had mentioned in the beginning of your story the difference as you grew in the profession with confidence. You know, for somebody that's either an aspiring law enforcement analyst or someone that's new in the field, what advice would you have them in terms of confidence?
They need to understand that this profession is all about details, trying to make sure that data is pure and clean. People coming up, new analysts who want to come on board. At this stage, there are so many people who that's all they've grown up with is technology and innovation and automation. So there should be confidence right there coming into this profession that if you are skilled and confident in that, learning about law enforcement and the ins and outs and how to work well with officers and command staff, that is something that you'll learn, and you need to adapt.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to know thy data, and it really comes down to a level of maturity. I joked with you about being voted the most quiet in your high school. I mean, when I was younger, I remember being uncomfortable to just introduce myself. Even to call somebody up on the phone and say, hey, this is Jason Elder. Like that would be something that I actually had to actually practice and get it and make sure I was okay with before doing it. And it's a lot of times it was people that I knew. It was like my uncle. It was like to say, hey, you know, this is my uncle. Hey, this is Jason. To say this is Jason Elder was really uncomfortable for me.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. This is a funny story from my very, very early days as an analyst, because I was so uncomfortable and not uncomfortable, but just aware of everything and making sure I'm doing everything right and not necessarily that comfortable in speaking in front of people or being the focus of attention. Like you said, the quietest thing. People who meet me now, they wonder, well, who that person was, because he can't get me to shut up. But at the early stages, my coworker, Ericka Jackson, she's a dear friend, and she was my first person to be part of the interview, to get me on board, and there was an immediate click and immediate connection. She would joke and say to me, because this is how I would act, if you don't look at them, they can't see you. And that's how I would be, like walking through major meetings or having to go to briefings and speak. If you don't look at them, they can't see you. So that was always our little joke to get through uncomfortable situations, just like you trying to call your uncle.
Whatever you have to do, right?
Exactly.
What's your favorite analyst tool?
Oh.
Or maybe do you have a least favorite?
That's an interesting question.
I'll tell you mine. I'll give you a second to think. I'll tell you mine. I'll tell you my least favorite, and this is going to probably get me into trouble a little bit. But
that's why I'm hesitating.
The mapping software. I won't name actual products, but some of the mapping software that I used in the past, man, I spent a lot of time swearing at that software. Crashes and trying to get it to work and doing even formatting a date seemed to be something that took me all day to do. It was just nerve-wracking. And so I haven't worked with it in quite a long time, so it may have improved since then. I would say my favorite tool was probably the link analysis tools. And because there was so much automation that could happen. You brought the data in, you imported the data, and then there was this quick animation that would build all the different links in front of you and identify patterns. And that product of building a link chart, I always found very enjoyable.
Well, you took one of my answers.
That's okay. It's okay to share.
But it's true. I would say my favorite still is doing link analysis. Link analysis, telephone analysis, association charts, timelines, anything like that. The developing different specifications to import the data. That sounds real nerdy, doesn't it? But developing all of this and having to be able to change things and work through it. And it's like a puzzle. I love puzzles. It's like a puzzle. You're trying to piece everything together so it makes sense. You are able to write a story in just small amount of data that you've displayed and put together. Or a large amount of data. It just depends. So yeah, I like telling the story.
Good. So next I want to work through a scenario exercise. I want to put you in a spot in which you're putting together an analyst team. And I want you to tell me the type of analyst you would select for your team. But I want a real answer. And so because I want a real answer, we're going to take a break and give you some time to think about it. You're listening to Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. We'll be right back.
So this is Sam, and I want to let you know that it's okay to talk to strangers. Obviously not if you are 4 or if you're walking alone at night or in the woods. But in general, if you're just out in your day-to-day life or you're traveling or whatever, talk to somebody, talk to strangers. It makes you a more interesting person because it gives you more perspective on life. Everyone is walking around with an interesting story. So many people will defy your expectations when you see someone and you make certain assumptions about them, whether they're conscious or unconscious. I love the moment when you realize you were wrong. It's a great feeling, and I think it makes your life richer in general. If you're too shy, then maybe just read Humans of New York. That might help you to understand other people's experiences. But I'm just here to say, don't not talk to strangers.
Hi, this is Sally Tarabah, here to tell you that nobody needs to know what first car you have, or what's your pet's name, or what street you grew up on. We all see these on Facebook and we all want to answer them. But keep in mind that there are people who are reading them, and they're going to go on your bank account and they're going to say, oh, I forgot my password, let me reset it. And the bank's going to ask, what's the first street you lived on? What is your cat's name? And what color car did you own? And the person reading it, they're going to look through your questions and they're going to answer and they're going to get access to your bank account. We call that social engineering. So next time you see that survey, that questionnaire, don't.
Welcome back. This is Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. I have Carolyn Cassidy with me, and we're continuing the conversation showcasing her career. And before the break, we were talking about a scenario in which she is responsible for putting together an analyst team. And I'm curious to know what type of analyst she would want on her team. So I wanted to give you a little bit of time to think about it and to get a real answer from you. So what you got for me?
All right. A real answer as opposed to a fake.
Well,
I know. You've given me some time to think about it. It's an interesting question, and it's interesting to think back. And I'm as you asked me, I started thinking about all of the individuals I've worked with, the friends I've made along the way, and this community of people. They are the hardest working, fun group of people. So I would have a really great unit, a fantastically entertaining but brilliant group of people. Our unit, or my unit, would obviously consist of a technical analyst, or someone who is a genius on a computer, because when it comes to programming or trying to come up with some kind of code or anything, that is my weakness for sure. There are so many different personalities that can make up a unit. Someone who is super detailed and focused, someone who will pick apart specific products and details and never miss anything. Someone with a lot of personality and the skill to work with other people. Sure. You're working with so many different levels, rank, different units. So you have to switch from presenting to the chief and speaking to all of the topics that he or she is focused on and the issues that they're dealing with, and then switch over to then presenting to a room full of maybe veteran police officers or very, very green officers who are brand new to the force. And you have to know how to not necessarily change your personality. I don't mean it like that, but be able to speak to your audience and know when to change that. So that would be a skill that I would be looking for.
Yeah, so I mean, it's I mentioned before, it's all about the data, but there is definitely an art to communicating the data and who your audience is. I
have just a little side story about that I'm speaking to various individuals. So I would tend, as a younger analyst, I would tend to just say, yes, okay, yes, I'll do that. Sure, yeah, I can take care of that, of course. Not whether it would take me forever to do and I had a million other things going on, but yes, I will get that done for you. And my supervisor pulled me aside, and this was Joe Ryan. And he was my supervisor then, and he said, you really need to learn how to be able to tell people you may not have time, or you can't get to this particularly, because people are going to continue to come last minute when they're running out the door for a meeting and they need a report completed or a workup done or something that you're going to have to scramble to complete. So, okay, yeah, got it. I definitely recognize that that's one of my weaknesses. So we then step out and we are getting ready to leave for lunch. And one of the one of the deputy chiefs approaches and asks me, can you take care of this as soon as possible, please? And I said, proudly, because Joe had just finished telling me, and I said, no, I'm sorry, I cannot complete that right now. And we worked it out. Joe kind of stepped in, and we told him we would get it done. And then as he walked away, Joe said, no. You have to learn who your audience is. You can't say no to the deputy chief. And I thought, well, all right, yeah, that lesson learned.
That's great. That's great.
So that is one lesson, something I will always kind of laugh about. But for other, I'm trying to think of other analysts, different skills. I'm basically thinking of creativity. You have to have creativity, communication, great communication skills, whether it be on paper or in person. You would be responsible for doing a lot of briefs, and just being a thorough analyst and having that drive to have to sit and comb through so much data, and where you're having to look at hundreds of photos to try to identify someone. So you have to have persistence as well.
I gotcha.
But I think that's a pretty good unit right there. And you have to have fun. You have to have a good time.
Well, excellent answer. All right. So the last segment that I have is words to the world. I give the guest an opportunity to have the last word. It's your time to endorse, highlight, whatever you want to say to the world. This is your words to the world.
Okay. Well, I hope I don't disappoint. Well, I because of the topic that we're talking about, I guess I would speak to anybody who is potentially interested in getting into this field. It's the best thing I've ever done. I've never not wanted to be doing what I'm doing over this past under 20 years, or just about 20 years. And the amount of camaraderie and support you get with your fellow analysts, the skills you develop, the confidence you can develop, there's never one day that is the same. That is for sure. It's my way of being able to do good and continue to be a part of this world and support those brave people who put the uniform on every day. But I don't necessarily have to do that. I can still do my little detective work, so to speak, behind a computer. And I'm offering the support that I can, and it fits me, and it's the best decision I've ever made. So if you're interested in something like that, I'm always willing to help support new analysts that come along and need a little guidance or just a little support for their endeavors.
Well, very good. I appreciate your time today, Carolyn, and you given me just enough to talk bad about you later. So I appreciate that. And you take care of yourself, and we'll be in touch soon.
You too, Jason. Thank you, and stay healthy.
Thank you for joining us today on Analyst Talk with Jason Elder. We hope you not only enjoyed the show, but also learned something new. For more information on our guests and information relating to today's topic, please visit our website at leapodcast.com. Special thanks to The Rough and Tumble for our theme song. For more of their music, you can visit their website at theroughandtumble.com. Also thanks to Kyle McMullen for our show logo. For more of his design, please visit his website at moderntype.com. The show is hosted, recorded, and edited by Jason Elder and written by me, Mindy. You can contact us both via the LEA Podcast website. Please join us again next time as we interview another expert in this great field.